Drug addiction is a complex and multifaceted issue that affects millions of people around the world. Addiction is characterized by compulsive drug seeking and use, despite negative consequences, and can lead to a range of physical, mental, and social problems. Neurochemical changes. When a person uses drugs, they interact with the brain's reward system, which is a complex network of nerve cells and neurotransmitters that regulate feelings of pleasure and reward. Specifically, drugs increase the release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that is associated with pleasure and reward, leading to a surge of euphoria and positive feelings. Over time, the brain can become less sensitive to the effects of dopamine, leading to a need for more of the drug to achieve the same level of pleasure. This is known as tolerance. Repeated drug use can also lead to long-term changes in the brain's reward system, which can contribute to addiction. For example, drugs can cause the brain to produce more dopamine receptors, making the brain more sensitive to the effects of dopamine. This can make a person more likely to crave the drug and to experience withdrawal symptoms when they stop using. Additionally, chronic drug use can lead to changes in other neurotransmitter systems, such as those that regulate stress and anxiety. For example, drugs can cause the brain to produce less of the neurotransmitter GABA, which helps to regulate anxiety. This can lead to feelings of anxiety and agitation when a person is not using the drug. Drug use can also lead to changes in the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that is responsible for decision-making and impulse control. Chronic drug use can impair the function of the prefrontal cortex, making it harder for a person to make good decisions and to control their impulses. This can contribute to a cycle of drug use and addiction. Genetic factors. Research has shown that genetics can play a role in a person's likelihood of developing an addiction. Specifically, certain genes may influence how a person's brain responds to drugs, including how they experience pleasure, the extent to which they feel the negative effects of drug use, and how quickly they become addicted. For example, variations in genes that affect dopamine signaling in the brain have been associated with an increased risk of addiction. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is involved in the brain's reward system, which is activated when a person experiences pleasure. Drugs can hijack this system by artificially stimulating dopamine release, which can lead to feelings of euphoria and reward. However, if a person has genetic variations that affect dopamine signaling, they may be more likely to experience a heightened response to drugs, which could increase their risk of addiction. Other genes that have been linked to addiction include those that regulate stress and anxiety responses, as well as those that affect the brain's ability to regulate impulsive behavior. For example, variations in the gene that codes for the protein neuropeptide Y, which is involved in stress responses, have been associated with an increased risk of addiction. Other factors. The environment in which a person lives can also contribute to their risk of addiction. Factors such as peer pressure, stress, trauma, and easy access to drugs can all increase the likelihood that a person will become addicted. Lack of social support can also influence a person's likelihood of developing an addiction. Individuals who lack social support or have limited connections to family or community may turn to drugs as a way to cope with feelings of isolation or loneliness. Mental health can also be a factor in addiction, as many people who struggle with addiction also have a co-occurring mental health disorder, such as depression or anxiety. Using drugs may provide temporary relief from these symptoms, leading to a cycle of self-medication and addiction. Social learning can also contribute to a person's risk of addiction. For example, if a person grows up around drug use or has friends who use drugs, they may be more likely to experiment with drugs themselves. Conclusion. It's important to remember that addiction is a complex and multifaceted issue, and that there is no single cause. Rather, addiction often results from a combination of factors, including genetics, environment, mental health, and social learning. Understanding these factors can help individuals, families, and communities to recognize the risks of addiction and to take steps to prevent it. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, seeking professional help is important in order to address the root causes and to develop effective strategies for recovery. Thanks for watching.